Hello and welcome to Broadcasting Scotland. It's Monday the 18th of October and this is Scotland at 7. I'm Andrew Wilson and this evening I'm hosting the programme from Edinburgh. First we will have today's coronavirus update and then I will introduce this evening's guest and then together we will look at today's news headlines from Scotland and around the world. As of 2 p.m. today, since the start of the pandemic, a total of 3,325,738 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government regional testing centres. Of these, 2,715,779 have been confirmed negative and 609,959 have tested positive. There are 2,194 new cases of COVID-19 confirmed by a test, although not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. I'm pleased to say that there are no new reported deaths of people who have tested positive. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 8,930. Now, this number only includes those who have died having received a positive test in the previous 28 days. Of the people who have tested positive, 857 were in hospital last night, 44 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. this morning, 4,289,119 people had received their first dose of the COVID-19 vaccination, and 3,879,942 had received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures show that 138,629 patients who had tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness, and that is an increase of 45 since yesterday. This number refers to deaths in all settings, not just in hospitals. Now then, I'm delighted to say that we're joined this evening by an eminent and regular contributor, the trade unionist, activist, volunteer, carer, and Newton Mearns answer to Nigella Lawson, Mr. Chris McCusker.
Only on a Friday night.
Chris, how are you doing?
No, good evening. I'm absolutely grand, Andrew. It's been a while since I've been on the show, so looking forward to it.
Well, it's fantastic, and thank you for joining us again this evening, Chris. Our first story is that at 2:30 p.m, MPs stood for a minute's silence to mark the killing of the Southend Conservative MP, Sir David Amess, on Friday. As MPs returned to Westminster after the killing of Sir David Amess on Friday, many said that they had difficult discussions with relatives over the weekend. My husband is asking me, how long can this really go on? How much do we have to take? Is it worth it? And in truth, at the moment, I don't have the answer for him, one MP said. Some cited a lack of resources to give them security in their constituencies, with constituents themselves offering to provide protection. On Monday, the Labour MP Chris Bryant revealed a 76-year-old man had been arrested over an alleged death threat made against him, made following Bryant's appeal for kindness in the wake of Amess's murder. Much discussion has focused on threats to MPs on social media and renewed calls for a ban on online anonymity. But several MPs said privately that their biggest worries did not come from online threats. Threats can be made in person, and constituency surgeries held weekly have left them feeling particularly vulnerable. No one wants to change the system, but 4 MPs have been attacked at their surgeries during my time, and 3 people are dead because of it, one Tory MP said. I'm not aware of anyone being killed by someone who tweeted at them. In June this year, it was reported that the Glasgow North West MP Carol Monaghan had to be moved to a police safe house after receiving death threats in 2019. In a tweet on Friday, Ms Monaghan said, "Political affiliations mean nothing when a colleague dies. David Amess was out meeting and serving his constituents, as he had done for many years. He should have been able to do this safely. My thoughts and prayers are with his family. May he rest in peace." Now, Chris, the Metropolitan Police report that the number of threats against MPs has been rising, with female MPs and those of colour particularly targeted. Many have seen those who have made violent threats against them convicted and sent to prison. The man who was charged with sending Jess Phillips and Rosie Cooper death threats in 2019, the member of a neo-Nazi group found guilty of plotting to kill Cooper with a machete in 2018, the man found guilty of harassing Luciana Berger in 2016, and of course Grant Carter, the SNP member who was found guilty of threatening sexual violence against Joanna Cherry earlier this year. Amos's killing has rightly raised the same questions as were raised after Andrew Pennington was killed trying to protect the MP Nigel Jones in 2000, after Stephen Timms was stabbed during a surgery in 2010, and of course after the murder of Joe Cox in 2016. So I've got two questions to you around about this story this evening. So firstly, do you think we do enough to protect our MPs from harm, given their profile and given the fact that they seem to become a target for protracted hate and the threats that they face as a result?
Well, I'll take the second question first, actually, because my initial reaction to hearing the news on Friday about David Amos's killing was the age-old question of why. I mean, was it a disgruntled constituent? Was it a religious aggravated? Was it racially aggravated? There are just countless questions as to why. Why would anyone be attacked at their place of work? And MPs and MSPs have got a unique sort of like way of working, because their main office or their main place of work, should I say, as the House of Commons, and in Holyrood, the Senate, and Wales, and the Assembly in Northern Ireland. But also they have their constituency work, members of the public don't go to their constituency office, to carry to go to a surgery. The MP goes to them, and they make themselves available in church halls and sometimes supermarkets and coffee shops and all the rest of it. I mean, David Linden, he holds his surgeries on a train. It sort of like goes around his constituency in a train, and stuff like that. So the overriding question is one of why. And I think it may be too early to label the reason for the killing. I see that mainstream media is putting it down as a terrorist act. What denounces terrorism, what depicts terrorism. So it could well just be, the chap that done it may have mental health issues, and other questions need to be flagged up as to was he getting the adequate treatment from the National Health Service? So there are countless ones. On the actual safety of MPs themselves, well, questions should have been asked, and were asked actually, at the sad killing of Joe Cox, and an awful lot of MPs did ramp up their security. Some of them installed panic buttons into their offices, and some of them have got the police on speed dial, and whatnot, what have you. I think we're a long way away. I have heard that there was talk about that police may have to accompany MPs in their constituency surgeries. I think we're a bit of a step away from that. But, again, I wouldn't rule anything out. If that's what one MP wants, then that's what one MP should have. Failing that, then, what is it? Is there to be an expense account where MPs can actually hire their own bodyguards? So there's various questions to it, and I mean, I have to put on record, as somebody totally opposed to David Amos's party, I have to put on record how sad and upset that I was to find out that somebody had committed an act of such vile, heinous, mindless violence. It's just mindless violence. I mean, as a humanitarian, I just can't understand how anyone can take someone else's life. I just don't understand that. But nobody should go to work and not come home from work. That's a trade union thing from years ago, a long time ago, and
Yeah.
that was in a time when we were talking about industrial accidents and stuff like that. But it certainly applies in this case.
It certainly does, Chris. It certainly does. Thank you. There's another aspect to this case, to this story this evening, and that is that Boris Johnson has confirmed that Southend will become a city in honour of Sir David Amess, the local Tory MP who was killed on Friday, who'd been a long-time committed campaigner for his area to gain that status. The Prime Minister said that the Queen had agreed that Southend would be granted city status, an issue that Amess had raised almost weekly in the House of Commons in the 40 years that he'd served as a backbench MP in that part of Essex. So the Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, said this afternoon that he was so pleased at the announcement, saying it is a fitting tribute to Sir David's hard work. It really is. So do you think it's a fitting tribute to his hard work?
I think it's a testament to the man. I really do, because as you say, almost comedically, he would always shoehorn it into one of his questions. Whether his question was about Beijing or Afghanistan or something like that, he would always shoehorn into the question about Southend getting city status. And I think it is very, very fitting that it should be given city status. I mean, it's as you say, he championed that city for nigh on 40 years. I've been in Southend, a couple of times, my time in England, and it's not quite a quaint old fishing village, as people would possibly think. But it's a nice wee place in its own right, and I think it's more testament to the man than the actual place itself. So yeah, I'm all for it.
Well, it's a good point that you make, Chris, because city status is often associated with having a cathedral or a university or a particularly large population. But nowadays, the formerly UK city status is granted by the Queen on the advice of Downing Street. So converting a town into a city doesn't entail any new powers or tax breaks or financial advantage for the city, or the new city, but it is considered to be a marker of status by some campaigners. It took 40 years, and it took a terrible set of circumstances for this to happen to Southend. But you think it is appropriate in the circumstances?
Oh, definitely, and it's only sad that through the taking of his life, will it actually be realised, and he won't actually see it. Which is a real shame. And I believe he was a devout Catholic, so drawing on my Catholic faith from years ago, you probably will see it. And his family will be eternally grateful, I'm sure, and that will be the man's legacy, I think. And
That's a very good point.
It's very, very fitting.
Thanks. Yes, no, thanks, Chris. We'll move now to our next story, and that is that the coronavirus vaccine certification scheme will become subject to enforcement from today, meaning that higher risk venues and events affected must verify customers are fully vaccinated or otherwise exempt before they're allowed to enter. The grace period from October the 1st, which was the launch date, allowed venues to test and trial the scheme without facing enforcement action. That has now expired. People attending a range of late-night venues and larger indoor and outdoor live events, such as music festivals or large sporting events, will be required to show staff proof they are fully vaccinated or are otherwise exempt. This can be done via the NHS Scotland COVID status app on their mobile device or using the paper certificate. The Health Secretary, Humza Yousaf, said the grace period allowed venues and businesses affected more than 2 weeks to test the scheme in practice and make suitable arrangements. It has also provided the government with helpful feedback from the sectors affected, and we continue to liaise with them going forward. So, Chris, proof of vaccination will be required to enter late night venues open after midnight with alcohol, music, and dancing. Sounds like your kind of gig. Also, unseated indoor live events with more than 500 people in the audience, unseated outdoor live events with more than 4,000 people in the audience, and any event of any nature which is more than 10,000 people in attendance. So those four criteria, they sound pretty limited to me. Do you think that this vaccine passport is going to make a difference?
I think it will in the long run. And I know it sounds limited at this moment in time, but I do believe that with in the coming months, I think it will be definitely increased the numbers wise. But I think it's a very cautious approach because remember we're going into possibly a very unseasonable winter ahead. I was watching the news earlier on, and the weather, although is uncannily warm at this moment in time, it's due to turn next week. I never thought I'd see myself doing an impersonation of Michael Fish on this show, but yeah, next week it's the Arctic turn is coming in, and the whole thing's going to shift 180 degrees, and we're going to get colder weather from the far north. From the likes of Norway and Iceland and stuff like that. So it is going to be unseasonably cold. So I think that they've been warning that the National Health Service is going to be under yet more immense hardship during the winter months. So I think it's wise at the moment to go the old Scots word "canny" on this, or is that Newcastle? I'm not so sure. But yeah, so I mean, to go slow at this moment in time, I think what is it, to err on the side of caution. I think is a very well used phrase, and I mean, I haven't downloaded mine yet. I've got the paper copy because I'm an old-fashioned git. But yeah, I'll do that because I will need one if I want to go to Celtic, if I'm lucky enough to get a ticket. As for the going to clubs at midnight and drinking to the wee small hours, I left that behind in 1987 and 88 and stuff like that. I made my mark back then. I don't think Glasgow's ready for another one.
I'll take your word for it, Chris. But the point you're making there about you've printed out the certificate, and I when the news when I remembered what day it was today, I went and checked that the app was working on my phone this morning. Although I'll not be going to nightclubs either, I can assure you. But do you think is the use of the passport either on phones or on the paper passport is that going to be a problem for folks?
There may be technical glitches to it. I don't know. I'm hearing anecdotal evidence of, and it's mainly coming from. I'm thinking about, the people who are against it. I can't remember the chap's name. The one that owns a garage in Glasgow. He seems to be quite vocal, thinking about it, and. Look, it's at the end of the day, it is a piece of software put in place. It's a piece of software put in place to try and keep the nighttime economy still working.
Mhm.
And yes, there will be technical glitches, as I say, but on the whole, I think that 9 out of 10 people in Scotland will. Well, okay, right, okay, I'll retract that. I'll go 7 out of 10 people out of Scotland will actually download it and use it because they want to possibly enjoy, you know, something near to normality as possible. And if this gives you something near to normality, it is no more a burden than a bouncer, asking for a driving license or a passport, in
Yep.
order to see that you're legally, of age to drink. There's no hassle in that.
Yep.
Years ago, if you were invited to a party, if you didn't actually take the hard RSVP along with you, you didn't get in. You, many discos operated a ticket-only policy, and if
Yep.
you'd lost your ticket, then
You're not getting in.
your ass was out the street. So I mean that's just that.
Yep. Yep, I get the point, Chris. That's I completely get it. We'll move on to talking about another use of technology in Scotland now with our next item, which is that concerns have been raised about the use of facial recognition technology on pupils queuing for lunch in school canteens in North Ayrshire. 9 schools in North Ayrshire have begun taking payments for school dinners by scanning the faces of their pupils. The company supplying the technology claimed it was more COVID secure than other systems, as it was cashless and contactless, and also that it sped up the lunch queue, cutting the time spent on each transaction to 5 seconds. The use of other biometric systems, principally fingerprint scanners, have been used in schools in the UK for many years, but campaigners say the use of facial recognition technology is unnecessary. Live facial recognition technology that scans through crowds to identify faces has been challenged by civil rights campaigners because of concerns about consent. CRB Cunningham's, the company providing this technology, said the system installed in North Ayrshire schools was different. Parents had to give explicit consent, and cameras check against encrypted faceprint templates stored on school servers. North Ayrshire Council have said that around 97% of children or their parents have given consent for the new system. Local authorities, as data controllers, have a duty to comply with general data protection regulations, and schools must by law adhere to strict guidelines on how they collect, store, record, and share personal data, especially personal data of young people. So, Chris, with this introduction of some new technology in North Ayrshire in this half term, do you think is this an indication that we're now starting to use too much technology in schools, or alternatively, is this a good use of technology to make busy school lunch times easier?
Well, I mean, I'm struggling to come up with an answer because I can say yes to both of those. I am slightly concerned. It's just the fact that I'm, an old codger, and it takes me time to catch up with the latest technology. That the automation will feature, more and more in our daily lives. I mean, I'm an avid non-user of the non-manned checkout thingies at the local grocery stores because it takes away a human being. And so I will wait in a queue and I will, cut the chaff with the till operator, and have a nice day and collect my groceries and go on my way. So yeah, I'm all for that. And when I go through the airport, I like to actually talk to the actual staff rather than going to a machine and ordering this, that, and the next thing. But I mean, getting back to the schools, if the data is treated appropriately, and there's no misuse of that data, then yes, if it aids school, to serve lunches better, then then that's fair dues. Uh, I mean, there are pros and cons. I can see on this story. It's just about embracing technology, which is something that I do. Usually kicking and screaming and stuff like that after my children have introduced me to it. But it is the way that things are going, so we might as well roll with it, I suppose.
Of course, Chris. Now, one thing, broadening out the political conversation just quickly with you, North Ayrshire is a minority Labour administration after the last election in 2017. Do you think, given the way in which every aspect of our lives in Scotland are politicised immediately, with the First Minister being held responsible for everything, including the weather, uh, do you think that the reporting of this story would be different if North Ayrshire was an SNP administration rather than a Labour administration? Because this story has been reported pretty straightforwardly today.
Yeah. I think it would have definitely had a different slant on it, and it would have been, one of Big Brother is watching your children or something like that routine. But that's the way that the right wing media work. If something comes out that is good for them, then they will champion it. I mean, I regularly check my Twitter in the morning and stuff like that to have a look at what BBC Scotland are discussing. In their sort of like morning drive time show. And 9 times out of 10, they always ask a Tory or a Labour MP or MSP for their opinion way beyond before they ask an SNP, MSP, or MP. And if somebody's not available, they will drag somebody out of the cupboard that is, of a British persuasion and stuff like that, in order to collaborate their SNP bad story. So yeah,
Yep.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely a strange one, but uh, again, it's only if they want to politicize it. I mean, had it been a Scottish government initiative, then I think it would have drawn more scrutiny. But at the end of the day, these things, technology should be lauded. Where it's going to be a benefit to the community. And it's again, we shouldn't be politicising schools. To my mind, anyway.
Yep.
Schools in the NHS definitely should not be politicised.
Absolutely.
As a Republican socialist, I just think that those two should be taboo, along with refugees
Absolutely.
as well.
Yes. Thanks, Chris. We'll talk about those seeking asylum and refuge a couple of times in the rest of this program. The first story we'll come to actually is that a scientist who's been conducting groundbreaking research into renewable energy is facing deportation with his family to Sri Lanka, where he experienced torture after receiving contradictory information about his case from the Home Office. Dr. Nadaraja Muhuntan, who's 47, his wife Sharmila, and their 3 children aged 13, 9, and 5, came to the UK in 2018 after he was awarded a prestigious Commonwealth Rutherford Fellowship in respect of his work on thin film photovoltaic devices which are used to generate solar energy. The Commonwealth Rutherford Fellowship allowed him to come to the UK for 2 years to research and develop the technology, and his wife obtained a job caring for elderly people in a nursing home while they were here. The family are Tamils, a group that has experienced significant persecution in Sri Lanka. In November, he returned to his home country for a short visit to see his sick mother. While he was there, he was arrested and persecuted by the Sri Lankan government. He managed to escape and returned to the UK, where he claimed asylum on the basis of what had happened on his visit to Sri Lanka. After his scholarship expired in February 2020, neither he nor his wife were permitted to continue working. A Home Office caseworker sent an email on 20 September this year saying the family's asylum claim was under active consideration, and another email on the 11th of October saying the asylum claim had been refused on the 23rd of August. That's 28 days before the family had been told that their case was still under consideration. The family had been renting accommodation in Bristol, and all the children were settled at school there. But the Home Office moved the family from their rented accommodation in Bristol to a London hotel last month, uprooting all 3 children from school. The 2 younger children now have school places, but Gihania does not and is confined to the hotel. When his scholarship visa first expired, the manager of the nursing home begged the Home Office to allow Sharmila to continue working. We are in dire need of trained healthcare staff, and we urge you to consider Mrs. Sharmila Mudhantan's right to work for us as a matter of urgency, her manager wrote. The request was refused. Both John Penrose, the family's Conservative MP in Weston-super-Mare, where they previously lived, and their lawyer, who has issued a legal challenge against the Home Office about its handling of the case, criticised the department's treatment of the family. So, Chris, is this just another example of the infamous hostility for which the Home Office is now famous?
Undoubtedly, it is, yeah. And the one that gets me is the fact that the Home Office are actively trying to use their own lawyers, and they don't like any interference from independent lawyers in asylum cases. Because their own lawyers are basically told, the full tick box exercise, and no doubt they'll get, handsomely rewarded for it, for just basically ticking off, X, Y, and Z on an application form, and as long as it conforms to the guidelines laid out by the Home Office, then it doesn't matter if the person in question is a skilled physician, a skilled medic, even a skilled baker. It is just the fact that anyone with a different coloured skin, other than white, is to my mind, is just not wanted in Britain's shores. And that effectively is coming from the person that runs the Home Office, which is Priti Patel. I honestly cannot, for the life of me, understand why this person has got a severe lack of empathy towards migrants and refugees, considering the fact that she is herself or her family were, migrants and refugees from, I think it was Idi Amin's regime.
That's correct.
My tiny brain cannot equate that. So obviously my pea-sized brain must be, in comparison to her ginormic brain, which obviously, dwarfs the amount of information that is able to be taken in, because she obviously knows things that I don't know about people of ethnicity. So I mean, whatever that is, I would love to be educated in that, because I just can't understand it for the life of me. I mean, going off piece, as you know, I've done humanitarian missions to Calais and Dunkirk, where I've actually spoken directly to refugees, and I have met doctors, I have met dentists, I have met mechanics, I have met bakers, chefs, all the rest of it. They just want to work.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
I mean, that is it in a nutshell.
Yep, Absolutely. Thanks. We'll move on now to the next story, which is that companies that dumped up millions of pounds to sponsor the COP26 climate summit have condemned it as mismanaged and very last minute in a volley of complaints as next month's event in Glasgow draws near. The sponsors, which include some of Britain's biggest companies, have raised formal complaints blaming very inexperienced civil servants for delayed decisions, poor communication, and a breakdown in relations between the organisers and other firms in the run up to the talks. Reports in The Guardian say that a letter to the organisers in May, written by the broadcaster Sky and co signed by senior leaders from other COP26 sponsors, raised concerns over plans for the event, followed by another co signed letter in more recent weeks. The UK is running its COP26 presidency from within the Cabinet Office under the leadership of the former Business Secretary Alok Sharma, who is the COP26 president, and the businessman Nigel Topping, who was appointed the government's high-level climate action champion last year. Sponsorship is expected to help defray a policing bill which has now been estimated to reach up to £250 million. Alongside Sky, the summit has 10 other major sponsors, including Hitachi, National Grid, Scottish Power and SSE, Microsoft, and the FTSE companies GSK, NatWest, Reckitt, Sainsbury's, and Unilever. Unilever has denied signing the letter penned by Sky. One source employed by a COP26 sponsor said that the biggest frustration was the lack of information about how the event will run and the role for its key backers, because important questions have gone unanswered and planning decisions have been delayed. The upcoming climate talks, considered the last chance to put the world back on track to meet its climate ambitions, are due to take place in early November after the event was postponed by a year because of the outbreak of COVID-19 in early 2020. So, Chris, this source employed by a COP26 sponsor said the biggest frustration was the lack of information and the role, and also because important questions have gone unanswered and planning decisions have been delayed. He said everything feels very last minute. Now, very last minute is the Boris Johnson way, isn't it? Avoid making decisions until events force the decision to be made for you. So is this just another indication, another manifestation of Johnson's style, which is just winging it?
Yeah. That is in a nutshell. And it's all right for me now to say, well, if Scotland was in charge of this, we would have done it a lot better. We would have done it a lot earlier. There would have been more coordination. There would have been more organisation. There would have been more accountability. There would have been more consultation with the people of Glasgow. I had a feeling that this was coming. Because I don't understand how you can organise an event from 500 miles away, 600 miles away, actually 640 as to Glasgow to London, Westminster. So you just can't do it, and what it will be is the fact that if something goes wrong, London will blame Glasgow rather than take the blame themselves, because Westminster are great in deflection tactics. It's always someone else's fault. A big boy did it and ran away. That's their mantra.
That's a very good point, Chris. Both winging it and also, as you say, deflecting blame onto whoever's standing nearest at the time. But we'll move on to our next story now, which is that it's been announced today that Colin Powell, the former US Secretary of State, who played a pivotal role in attempting to justify the 2003 invasion of Iraq, has died from complications from COVID, aged 84. Powell, a retired four-star general who served as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the early 90s, had been treated for COVID at the Walter Reed National Medical Center in Bethesda, Maryland. He was fully vaccinated against coronavirus. Announcing his death, his family said they had lost a remarkable and loving husband, father, grandfather, and a great American. Powell was America's first black Secretary of State, serving in that role under George W. Bush from 2001 to 2005. Born in New York City to Jamaican parents, he was raised in the Bronx and educated through public school before he entered the army. He rose to occupy the top military positions in the US government as chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff between 1989 and 1993. And in that role, he presided over military crises, including the invasion of Panama and the First Gulf War in 1990-91. But it was in the build-up to the contentious invasion of Iraq in 2003 that Powell became a household name. He was the face of the Bush administration's aggressive attempt to get the world community to back the invasion, based on false claims of Iraq's possession of weapons of mass destruction. In February 2003, as Secretary of State, Powell appeared before the UN Security Council and made categoric claims that the then Iraqi leader Saddam Hussein had biological weapons and was developing nuclear weapons. He said his intelligence was based in part on accounts of unidentified Iraqi defectors. The invasion went ahead without UN authorization, and the following year the CIA's own Iraq study group released a report that concluded that Hussein had destroyed the last of the country's weapons of mass destruction a decade earlier. Powell stepped down as Secretary of State in November 2004, following Bush's re-election. He later insisted to reporters that he had tried to warn Bush of the consequences of invading Iraq, but had supported the president when the decision to proceed was taken. So, Chris, we'll look a little bit more broadly at the circumstances surrounding Colin Powell's career. For a time in the mid-1990s, because of his success, his perceived success, he was considered a leading contender to become the first black president of the United States. Now, he declined to run, saying he wasn't interested in electoral politics. But do you think, was that an opportunity for him to be the first African-American president? Was that an opportunity missed?
No, I don't think it was an opportunity missed. I think, it was on record that he had no aspirations for the life of a president. First and foremost, he was a dedicated member of the armed forces. But I think it's right to say that he is the first prominent black politician in American politics to rise to very, very high office. His dabblings in, more notably the Iraq conflict, has possibly put a black mark on his copybook, but I don't actually think that in the grander scheme of things, when you're recounting someone of that ilk, shall I say, the fact that he grew up from very humble background in the Bronx, and to get to where he got to is, an unbelievable achievement. It's a testament, obviously, to his parents.
Absolutely.
And that just highlights wonderfully how immigration does actually work. In a modern democracy, where people of colour and ethnicity can actually rise to high office and discharge their duties, competently.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. So our next story this evening, Chris, is that France has said that its ambassador to Belarus had left the country yesterday because authorities in Minsk had asked him to leave after he did not present his credentials to Alexander Lukashenko. The European Union has refused to recognise Lukashenko's election to a sixth presidential term, and in line with the EU policy, the French envoy had not submitted his accreditation to the Belarus leader more than a year ago. Speaking to reporters in an online briefing today, the French Foreign Ministry spokesperson Anne-Claire Legendre said Paris had taken proportional measures against Belarus following Minsk's decision. France will continue to stand by the Belarusian people and will look for a solution to the crisis in the country, she said. A diplomatic source, speaking on condition of anonymity, said that Belarus's ambassador had been asked to leave Paris. The French ambassador, Nicolas Delacoste, will now assume the role of special envoy for Belarus, while his number two at the embassy will take over his role. Relations between EU member states and Belarus have been at a low ebb since last year, when Lukashenko claimed to have won an election that the opposition said was rigged. Since the election, Lukashenko has cracked down on the opposition, journalists and protesters, detaining leading figures and driving them into exile. So, Chris, EU sanctions against Belarus began in October 2020, and there have been progressively more measures have been imposed. And we've been told that the measures have been adopted in response to the fraudulent nature of the election and the intimidation and violent repression of protesters, of political opposition and journalists. And those sanctions were stepped up again in June earlier this year. So is this all part of a wider plan to turn Belarus under Lukashenko and Lukashenko himself into a pariah and Belarus into a pariah state? And if it is that the best way to protect the people of Belarus?
Well, I don't know if it's the best way to protect the people of Belarus, but I do stand in solidarity with the French in taking this stance. Something has to give, and Lukashenko needs to know that through his actions, he is no friend of his European neighbours, and there possibly high chances that it won't be replicated by the British ambassador. But that's neither here nor there. I think if Scotland was a member of the European Union, I think we would be doing the same. Because it is right to point out the fact that his win was illegitimate. It was almost certainly rigged. We've documented it on this news channel quite a few times, and wonderfully highlighted the lengths that Lukashenko is willing to go to in order to, be top dog, head honcho, big cheese. Yep. So I would say that the action taken by the European Union is proportionate. It still allows them to make their representations. Just not being in the actual country itself. So they are willing to negotiate. They are willing to open discussions, so that the ball is firmly in Lukashenko's court.
Thanks, Chris. And we'll come to our final story for this evening, which is that local and national resources from Police Scotland will again come together to keep communities across the country safe during the weekends of Halloween and Bonfire Night. Local area commanders, the length and breadth of the country, in collaboration with divisional commanders, have designed policing plans for scheduled events and to take into account sporadic incidents. These plans will be enhanced with national resources, including tactically located specially trained public officers, if required, who will deploy in support of colleagues if necessary. A policing operation under the name Operation Moonbeam has been stood up since 2018 in response to significant public disorder and antisocial behaviour that we saw in 2017, which included targeted attacks on blue light services responding to emergency calls on what is typically one of the busiest periods of the year. The operation has been activated as both a reassurance for communities, police officers and their colleagues, and as a deterrent to those who may set out to cause disorder and engage in criminality. Since the operation was first instigated, there have been decreases in the levels of disorder witnessed around these events, including in 2020 when COVID-19 substantially curtailed the number of organised displays which were held. The executive lead for Operation Moonbeam, who's the Assistant Chief Constable Tim Mayers, said both Halloween and Bonfire Night fall on weekends this year, and which also land during our policing operation for COP26. While this will undoubtedly be a time of exceptional demand on the police and all our emergency services colleagues, I can assure the public and our partners that we are fully committed to responding to any disorder which may occur as a result of these annual events. So, Chris, lots of things are being suspended during COP26. The courts, for example, because of the demands on police resources. So do you think the Scottish Government should be asking folks to forgo bonfires again this year?
I'm a real party pooper because as a pet lover and an ex pet owner, I used to hate the stress that my dog would go through when fireworks were let off outside the house and stuff like that, and in the vicinity. She used to take terrible fright. And it's upsetting, for cats as well and stuff like that. So, I'm not a great. I mean, I don't want to sort of like rain on the kids' parade and stuff like that. I mean, but I mean, we're talking about Halloween. What happened to gentle guys and you know, chapping in the door and doing your wee party piece and then getting an apple and an orange and a couple of sweeties and then on you go to the next house. There were no sort of like party poppers and stuff like that involved. It was just sort of like chat the door, do your turn, and then you get the bum's rush. So but I mean, there has been. I think one major supermarket has actually forgone the sale of fireworks this year. Which I think is a great initiative. Because there's far too much misuse of fireworks and stuff like that and all the rest of it. See, when you watch the likes of Chinese television and stuff like that, and you see, they're having a parade and stuff like that, and the firecrackers are going 10 a penny and stuff like that. It seems to be done in a controlled environment, and everybody's quite happy with it and whatnot, what have you. You don't hear, you rarely hear of, a Chinese national being scarred and maimed by a firework and stuff like that. So
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
Britain itself as a whole. It's not often you'll hear me talking about Britain, but Britain as a whole need to get away from this kind of Guy Fawkes culture. And sort of like grow up a wee bit and start to take other things into consideration. The likes of animals and stuff like that.
Absolutely. Thanks, Chris. And while that was our final news item this evening, as we have you on the programme tonight, Chris, I thought it would be great for us all to hear a little bit from you with an update about what it is that you've been up to over the past fortnight. So you've got 2 minutes to update us about what you've been busy
I'll
with.
get 2 minutes. Oh my God! Can we get another hour? Listen, I mean, obviously, I'm wearing my refugee thing. Eastwood Refugee Aid, we're having an open weekend this coming weekend at our new hub, our new collection and distribution hub at 60 Busby Road, Clarkson, in the south side of Glasgow. And we have been getting donations in daily. It's been absolutely mesmeric, the amount of people that are just donating clothes and toiletries and household items and stuff like that, boots and shoes and kiddie toys and stuff like that and all the rest. But it's absolutely wonderful. The likelihood of East Renfrewshire actually getting any Afghan families is very, very slim, because the fact that, like many councils, East Renfrewshire has got a shortage in housing stock. But I have been in discussion with my comrade in the trade union group, Councillor Ross Cassie, up in Aberdeenshire, and a couple of other councillors around Angus Way and stuff like that in Perth. And we will organise through time. We will organise for a van to go from East Ren up to support their communities there with some much needed gear. But I'll put out a general invite to the viewing audience. Again, 60 Busby Road, 10 till 3. You'll get a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, and a couple of biscuits and some refugee chat. And then 6:30 till 10:30. We've got an art exhibition by a local artist, Alistair Bamforth, who is one of our group members. Alistair's been on a few aid missions to Calais and Dunkirk and Sangatte. And Alistair's developed a talent for artistry, slant drawing, and stuff like that. It's a really funny story. If I tell you that he took a wee drawing pad with him when we were out at the satellite camp at Sangha, and through just his wee scribblings and stuff like that, he actually was a financial advisor and took his retirement, and then decided to be a mature student and go to art school, where he's done 4 years at Glasgow School of Art, and he's now entered into doing a postgrad. The man is very gifted, very talented. You need to come along, see some of his pieces, and they are up for sale, they're up for auction, and all proceeds will go to Eastwood Refugee Aid. So
Thanks,
there you are.
Chris. So to recap, the hub is at 60 Busby Road in Clarkston. And
Yep.
which days and what times is it open for folks to come and see you?
It is open between 10 and 2 on a Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday it is open from 1 till 3. Well, actually, this week it's open on Friday. It'll be open tomorrow. Yeah, 10 till 3. Because I'll be actually painting the inside of it as well to make it presentable. And Wednesday it will be the same. Thursday should be the same. Friday it will be from 1 till 3, 12 till 3. Saturday we're open from 10 till 3 for coffee and biscuits and some refugee chat. And then 6:30 till around about 10:30. You'll get a glass of wine and some cheese and some nibbles and stuff like that. And as I say, we're also open on the Sunday as well, 10 till 3. So you can pop in. If there's any wine left, you might get a glass, and if not, you'll just get a cup of tea. And there are paintings there, not prints, paintings, original paintings, and they're there for sale, auction, you name it, donation. It all goes to help refugees worldwide. Although we're predominantly helping Afghan families at the moment, we do regularly, because of COVID, we've not been out to France to help our friends that care for Cali. But we also work with Refugee, we also work with SAFAR, and if you donate it to us, if we can't distribute it to Afghan refugees, it will go to either SAFAR or Refugee, or it will end up over in France, and you'll be helping to clothe a refugee somewhere.
Lovely. Thanks, Chris. In making these programmes, Broadcasting Scotland relies on the support of viewers and others who value our distinctive approach to news, current affairs and culture. If you would like to support us, and we would really like you to support us, then please consider subscribing or donating to Broadcasting Scotland, and you will find the link to do that on the screen now. There are other ways in which you can contribute to our work. If you would like to volunteer to work with Broadcasting Scotland, then please visit our website at www.broadcastingscotland.scot and send us a message there. Meantime, we will be here again at 7 o'clock tomorrow evening with Scotland at 7, so please join us then. I'd like to say thanks to everyone for joining us on Broadcasting Scotland this evening, and of course, very special thanks to our very special guest this evening, Chris McCusker.
No, thank you, Andrew. I would just like to say one more thing. Nobody should be illegal.
We won't disagree with that, Chris. And so that's the way it is at very nearly Scotland at 8. We all hope that you have a very peaceful evening.